Welcome to Cybersecurity Shorts, a series of short presentations on cybersecurity topics. These are brought to you by L2 Cybersecurity Solutions, and my name is Liam Lynch. This presentation is on the topic of two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is a great way of securing your online accounts. It puts another step in the process of signing into these accounts, and it's a step that you control completely. The bad guys will not be able to compromise your online accounts because of this additional step, and it's fairly straightforward to set up, and it really does give some excellent protection. So let's take a look. How do you normally sign in to online services? Well, we're quite used to asking us for our user ID and password, which we type in, and then we gain access to our accounts, our emails, our Facebooks, Twitters, Instagrams, etc. Thing is, if the bad guys have somehow managed to get our online credentials, they simply type it in, and they now have access to our accounts. You may ask, how might they have gotten access to our credentials? Well, down through the years, there's been many data breaches of different services online. For example, in 2012, LinkedIn got hacked, and their database of user ID and passwords for millions of users was downloaded by the bad guys. And these passwords have been cracked over the period of time that has passed since then, and they are because let's face it, folks, everybody tends to use the same password for multiple accounts, which is a topic for another day. But because of that, the bad guys can have figured out the LinkedIn passwords, so then they try the same user ID and password on an email account or a Twitter account or an Instagram account, and if the person used the same password, they're in straight away. So that's no problem for the bad guys. Also, you may have potentially received a dodgy email from somebody with a link, and maybe you clicked on that link, and maybe something popped up and says, "Oh, you need to sign into your email here." So you may have inadvertently given out your email ID and password, which, as I say, may be the same password you use on multiple accounts, and so now the bad guys have got access to your online services. So what am I talking about factors? What are the factors that we're talking about? Well, there are three factors in online authentication. So it's something which is your password or PIN. So these are things you have to remember. And something you are would be your fingerprint or a retina scan. So the third one then is something you have. So it could be a smart card or your phone, or it could be one of these type of tokens that generates a random 6-digit code. So there's many ways to identify you, and here in this example of this high security facility, this gentleman is using two different factors to gain access to this locked room. So he's using something he is, which is his retina scan and his handprint and his footprint, and something he has, which is a smart card, which he's swiping there. So using two-factor authentication, how does that now change how we log on to the online services? So as usual, we're asked for our user ID and password, which we type in, and then the service will ask us for a code. So we will use the second factor, which we'll come to in a minute, which will give us a 6-digit code. We simply type that in, and we're happily in to use our online service. But how does this affect the bad guys? How does this change things? Because we have this additional step in the process, bad guys will have our user ID and password, which they can type in, and then they get asked for a code, which they have no control over, and they cannot gain access to our account. So that's where this two-factor authentication really shines through. It stops them from getting into your account. So, we've talked about generating the codes, but how can you get one? Well, there's many different ways to get these second factor. The most basic one is a text message, so that you can get the online service to send you a text message with the security code when it comes to that step. Text messages aren't the most secure though, and I really wouldn't recommend it if you can at all avoid using SMS text messages for receiving codes. This is because text messages can be intercepted and they can be spoofed, and it's just not as secure as it could be. But some of the services, this is the only facility that they have. So if they have it, well, use it. But if you can at all avoid it, maybe don't. You can also get paid solutions, which would be things like these disconnected tokens, which is just a little fob which generates a 6-digit code which randomly changes every 30 to 60 seconds. And also you can get what's called connected tokens, which are little USB devices which plug into your laptop or desktop, and these would just are a second factor, so that when they're plugged into your laptop or desktop, that's your second factor there, and you're approved. But everybody's got a smartphone these days, or well, most people do. So there must be an app for these type of things, and indeed there are. Probably the most popular one is Google Authenticator, which, in spite of it being a Google piece of software, they also have developed a version for iOS, so you can get it on your iPhones. There's also a software called Duo Security and something called Authy. So these are all different types of apps that you can get to do your two-factor authentication. So then, if you want to go get it set up on your online service, unfortunately they all seem to call it different things. They don't just all call it two-factor authentication, but they call it other things, like they've got 2FA or two-step verification or login approvals or two-step authentication or multi-factor authentication. It's a jungle out there, and these guys just have different ways of calling these things. So, but how do you go and set up this two-factor authentication on some online service that you're using? Well, it all depends. So you really just go into the online service you're using and search the online help, and just look for search for two-factor authentication or two-step verification. Those two searches should at least show you the help that you need for setting this up. So follow the instructions. Now these instructions are written with the user in mind, so they should be straightforward enough to get it set up. So just follow the steps that it provides you. When the service shows you a QR code like that there, simply open up the Authenticator app on your phone and add a new account, and then point your phone's camera at the code. This will then give you a 6-digit number to verify, which you type that in on the online service, and the app will now be synchronized with your phone. So that's it, you're all set up for that particular service. Now, I would recommend that right now, after this, you've finished this presentation, go to your main email account, your Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo or whatever your main email account is. And I'm talking about the account that is linked to all of your other online services, like your LinkedIn and your Facebook and Instagram or WhatsApps. Whatever the service is, whatever points back to the main email account, go to that email account now and set this thing up. This will give you the best protection possible, and since your main email account is the keys to your kingdom, your online kingdom, you really need to protect that now. So if you get this set up now, that will give you a huge boost in protection from the bad guys. Then over the next few weeks, every couple of days, maybe go to a different online service and just add that to your two-step verification app, and just get it set up for all of these other services. So that means that nobody can break into those online services because they don't have your app and they can't access the service without that. So it's the greatest protection you can possibly get, and it's all for free. So you can get more information on my website at l2cybersecurity.com/the-10-commandments. There's 10 commandments there. Two-factor authentication is one of them, and there are many other helpful, useful tips and advice on that. So thank you for listening to this presentation on two-factor authentication. This has been Liam Lynch for L2 Cybersecurity Solutions. Thank you and goodbye.